Hey everyone, welcome in to another daily editorial here on the KE Report. I'm getting an update from Kuya Silver, traded on the CSE under the symbol KUYA, also on the OTCQB under the symbol KUYAF, and the Frankfurt Exchange under the symbol 6MR1. I am chatting with the president and CEO, David Stein. David and I are going to be focusing on the Silver Kings property in Ontario, as just recently, July 25th, the company announced that it is starting the largest ever drill program at the Silver Kings project. It's an anticipated 6,000 meter diamond drill program that is fully funded. Now, I'm going to post figure 2 from the news release. It's a map that outlines some of these target areas, as well as also an overview of these targets and more targets and how the company ranks those targets. Now, David, this program is focused at this Campbell-Crawford area, following up on grassroots discovery from the last program earlier this year. Let's just start off by reminding everybody, please, of that discovery, some of those results that are leading you to start off this drill program here.
Sure. Thanks for having me, Corey. Yeah, so the discovery hole, which was hole number 8 of the program from Q1 earlier this year, intercepted 15,372 grams per ton silver and 0.08% cobalt over 3.34 meters. So we hit a very rich vein structure there. So we're talking about over 1.5% silver in that intercept over more than 3 meters. And while that seems extremely high, and it is consistent with what you would have seen from the cobalt mining camp 100 plus years ago. And so I think we found a very typical Cobalt Ontario style mineralized zone here at depth. And it's a brand new grassroots discovery. So that was extremely exciting to be, a part of that and to see that silver coming up from, underground. And then a few holes later, we were able to hit the same vein again. And there we hit it 2,400 grams per ton over about 2.5 meters. So that alone is a spectacular intercept. But of course, the 1.5% is even is about 6 times better. Nevertheless, we're clearly onto a really high grade vein there. Now, that's just one vein, and if you look at the other big productive mines in the cobalt camp historically, these veins occur in clusters where they're, close together, sometimes or often intersecting each other. And we indeed did hit other vein structures in this drill program. We only drilled 7 holes, by the way, into this new area, and we were hitting anomalous to high grade mineralization in every single hole. But we think in some of these other holes, we hit these veins either too shallow or too deep. There's a productive horizon or a sweet spot where the veins seem to blow out and become, a lot richer and higher grade and probably even thicker as well. And so when we go back now, we can target that productive horizon better because we know more about it now than we did when we just made the discovery a few months ago.
So when it comes to this program and how you're going to be expanding or trying to expand on those discovery holes, what's the strategy? What type of step outs are you doing? How deep are you going to drill? Give us more information on this end, please.
Sure. So the Angus vein was hit at about 225 meters below, or maybe 200 meters below surface, about there, between 2 and 225 meters below surface. Obviously, we're drilling angle holes, so the hole depth's a little deeper than that. But that's more or less the target horizon here in this particular area. So, I mean, as far as mining goes in the world, that's not that deep. But for the cobalt camp, where most of the mineralization was discovered at surface, that is very deep. So that's why, this zone is still there, was never mined 100 years ago because it was too deep for the old timers to find its surface. So that's really the depth that we're going to be targeting with most of our holes here. Now, in terms of the strategy, I think there's really three phases to the strategy in this next drill program. One is on the Angus vein itself, where obviously we've got the best two results so far. That vein is open in all directions. We only hit it twice, so we need to step out and drill that, in both directions along strike at depth, even up dip as well, and see, how big it is, if maybe even gets richer in some direction. Who knows? So Angus vein will be target number one. The next stage is to investigate those other vein structures that we hit in the other holes, which are, in some cases very close to the Angus vein. For example, the McNamara vein, which we identified at surface, it's a structure that goes all the way to surface, 200 meters, and has the similar characteristics to the Angus vein. We'll try and see if we can hit that at depth as well, and see if it blows out and, has the rich silver cobalt mineralization. And then there's some other structures as well that we intersected with our drilling, again, that need to be sort of tested within the productive horizon. And in that horizon, we would expect them to be richer and thicker, potentially. So that would be kind of stage two. And then stage three would be to step out a little bit further to go, but still close to this Campbell-Crawford discovery, and, test to see if there are, other veins a little further away. One obvious target there, for example, is going to be the what we call the Clark vein, which is another vein that comes to surface, but on the west side there's a very small lake there, which we believe is essentially there because of a fault structure. And on the west side of that lake, it's another property that we have called Air Geode. So it adjoins the Campbell-Crawford property. And that's another target that we have. It's a few hundred meters away, but it looks like it could be part of the same system, the same vein system. And that's an obvious one that we'll test as well in this next program.
Okay, so there was also a news release on June 29th that talked about how you were expanding the strike length of some of the surface mineralization. You covered off these three distinct vein zones that were outlined in that news release that said the combined length is 375 meters of these vein zones. How much is that news release also playing into the drilling, or at least the planned drilling that's ongoing now?
Well, it's part of our exploration model is really that, these veins, which have essentially the strength, the energy to go through, in this case, 200 meters of probably barren Nipissing diabase, and we can find them at surface. Those structures, we think, are going to be more likely to be mineralized at depth. They're not necessarily the only structures, but they might be the major structures, because obviously there's more energy in them to go through that much rock and still be there, so that we can observe them at surface. So, for example, on surface, we have, on the Campbell-Crawford, we've got the Angus vein at surface. We've got the McNamara vein at surface. They're parallel to one another. And then as we go at depth, we think that those veins may, either branch out or may become 6 or 7 veins at depth in that same area. That's certainly what we seem to have hit with our previous drilling. And again, if we can hit the veins in the right level in the stratigraphy, which we call the productive horizon, that based on our exploration model is where the structures kind of blow out in size, and you get, the higher grade mineralization. And then likewise, on the western side of the lake, we can go over to the Clark vein, which is identical to Angus and McNamara. It's another vein that is depth. It's weakly mineralized at surface, but again, it's probably 200 to 250 meters away from where the productive horizon is at depth. And we need to drill it deeper. And if we do that, we could have something similar to what we found with the Angus vein. That's certainly our model, and there's no reason why it's not repeatable, not just here in this Campbell-Crawford area, but in other locations all over our huge 18,000 hectare land property or land package.
So I think there are a few, I guess, questions that came in during that webinar that we did on June 2nd that you all can watch the replay of to get a good overview of this initial discovery and also some more background on it. But there were a number of questions that came in asking about resource drilling. How much drilling would you have to do to put together a resource? Just what's possible in terms of an overall silver resource at this asset. I think we should reiterate just how early on this is and what that also means for potential to grow the company here. So can you just remind everybody just how still early stage this is that you are going after, not just this discovery, but maybe some other areas as well?
Yeah. So, I mean, definitely it is early. I mean, we have 2 pierce points into it at this point, into the Angus vein, the Campbell-Crawford, target. But I would expect with this next program, we will be able to add a lot of pierce points to the model. Whether or not we'll be in a position to, actually calculate a resource, it might still be a bit early for that, but we'll see what we can do. I mean, the one thing with given the richness of these veins, when you do find them, you can drill a lot of ounces really quickly, and that's just the nature of high grade systems, here in Ontario or anywhere in the world, really. So, you do have to drill them more closely spaced, but you can, in 100, 200, 300 meters of strike length, we could have potentially millions of ounces. So that's sort of where we're at. It's a very exciting time because obviously we're going to be able to go from discovery now to start really unlocking value and building ounces here as we drill, the Angus vein out and the other veins as well. So this next program will be probably the biggest in terms of just the sheer growth of this particular discovery, because we're essentially going from 0 to 60 here in the next drill program. In terms of the ultimate potential, I think the best thing to do is to look around the camp at what these other vein clusters that ultimately became mines produced. And you look at the mine that's sort of, northeast of us on what's called Cross Lake. It's not on our property, but it's relatively close to Campbell-Crawford. That mine, for example, produced over 20 million ounces in a very small area. A kilometer to the south in the Kerr Lake area, which is our property, there were 3 or 4 mines that produced essentially all in the same vein cluster and, produced more than 50 million ounces over, again, a very small area of, where you're looking at, tens of millions of ounces over a few hundred meters. And you find examples of that over and over again. You go to the town of Cobalt, the old Agnico Eagle mines. You find examples of this over and over again where you're getting, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 million ounces in a very small area. So I think that's the potential here. And then, of course, again, just to reiterate, this is just one area. And, of course, this is where we're going to be focused right now because we just made a discovery and we really want to see, how big and how rich it is. But we do have other targets. We've got dozens of other targets, including some that are pretty advanced, pretty close to Campbell-Crawford in terms of their level of knowledge and sort of ranking in our exploration model. And we will be able to at some point to go back to those and potentially have another discovery.
All right, David, I think that's a good summary there of what's, I guess, possible on this project, but one step at a time. This is more just the phase 2 following up on that recent discovery. We'll see what the drills yield, and I'll follow up with you as we get some more results. If anybody has any follow-up questions for David regarding this drill program or any of the strategy at the company, please email me, fleck@kereport.com. I'll get David to address those for you and potentially discuss them on future interviews. So, David, Thank you very much for this update. I appreciate your time.
Thank you. My pleasure.